Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the GD Report. I'm G,
And I am D.
and we've got a pretty good show on tap for you tonight. We are going to start by heading south like the Devil in Charlie Daniels classic hit. We're heading down to Georgia. So tell us, D, what's going on down there?
Well, the devil went down to Georgia. I think that's going to be this weekend when Trump goes down there.
Right.
But supposedly Donald Trump's on his way down. I think this is it Friday or Saturday? He's going to be there.
I think it's
And
Saturday.
I think, man, all hell's going to break loose when he gets here. We're obviously in the heat of a 2 Senate seat runoff.
Right.
With the balance of the Senate weighing. We've talked about this a lot. And by the way, the GD report was one of the first broadcasts that I saw that said the Senate could come down to Georgia.
Right.
And it did. So
I believe that was your call.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I'll give it up to myself on that one.
Right.
So we've got that election coming up in January, and a lot of the I know the Democratic senatorial candidate, their ad buy dropped today, and it was in the multi-million-dollar level. You've got Donald Trump going down there, but there's a whole problem for Republicans because Donald Trump is still saying that the election in November was a sham and a fraud. He has said that he regretted endorsing Brian Kemp now. He's attacked Raffensperger, the Secretary of State. One of the election officials came out yesterday and said that poll workers are receiving death threats. People's addresses are being published online. And he said it's got to stop. And then Trump doubled down on it and said he's not backing off of any of it, that he's encouraging Brian Kemp to cancel the upcoming election because in his words, quote, "We will all win," unquote, if he cancels the election. So you've got a lot of competing factors going here. There's some of the leading right-wing conservative pundits that are encouraging Republicans in Georgia to boycott the election.
Yeah.
Because they feel like that it's going to be a fraud already. Romney McDaniel, that we mentioned on our last podcast, she had an event last weekend where she was encouraging people to vote. They were saying, why should we vote if it's already fixed? So I feel like Republicans have painted themselves into a corner on this one, where if they encourage people to vote and they say that that this could be the thing that puts a limit on Joe Biden's presidency, they're admitting that Trump lost the election.
Right. Well, I wanted to say that according to the Washington Post, they report that Lynn Wood, who's a big Trump ally down in Atlanta, he's got about several 100,000 followers on his Twitter account. And he tweeted yesterday, "If not fixed, I will not," in all caps, "vote in the Georgia runoff." And then trending on social media are hashtag Crooked Purdue and hashtag Crooked Kelly, and they're being called liberal demo rats.
Yeah, I don't know that the Democrats could have getting into the runoff. I don't know if they could have scripted this kind of response from the Republicans,
right?
Because to suppress their own voters, and I've read some really connected Republicans this week are saying that they're worried about what Trump's going to say when he goes to campaign this weekend,
right?
Because we all know he cares about one person and one person alone, and that's himself.
Oh yeah.
And so he's going to talk about the election was a fraud, the election, he was ripped off, they should just cancel this election. And it's not going to be any kind of positive, hey, get out and vote. Hey, be sure you're voting for Kelly and David in this thing. It's, it's to quote one of my friends about another topic this weekend, it's going to be a shit show inside of a dumpster fire.
Right. Yeah, I guess they had on Wednesday afternoon, they had a pretty big turnout, several hundred at a park in Alpharetta, and Alpharetta is just north of Atlanta, and pretty much a bastion of republicanism. But Sidney Powell was there, the disgraced Trump attorney, former Trump attorney, and
Yeah,
Lynn was there.
when you've been repudiated that you're not a legitimate source by Rudy Giuliani,
Right.
I think that's a pretty strong indication that you're a strong outlier. So they had a big rally, though. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they had a big rally, and they were basically encouraging Republicans not to vote in this rigged election because the first one was rigged. It hasn't been fixed. The second one will be rigged, and the Democrats are going to win. So why vote if it's already rigged? And so, like you said, the Democrats couldn't have scripted this any better.
Yeah, it's almost to a point where you as a Democrat, you've got to obligatory run some campaign spots to get your vote out.
Right.
But man, if they're telling their voters not to vote, holy cow.
Right.
Pretty crazy. So the last polling I saw was pretty close. It had Warnock up on Loeffler by about 1 point, and then Ossoff up on Perdue again by about 1 point or a half a point. It was very close. But that was really close to the last election. I haven't seen any polling since there's been this encouragement for people not to vote. So, and again, we talked about how bad the polling was on the Senate races. So
right.
I think it's going to come down to a turnout game. And if you're encouraging your side not to turn out, I don't know how you expect to have good results. But if the Democrats pull these two seats out, they're going to have the majority at that point.
Right.
No matter how small it is, it's a majority, 50 plus 1.
50
plus. And at that point, that determines who the committee chairs are. And Lindsey Lady G. Graham is no longer a chairman of a committee. He's going to be a ranking member at that point.
Right.
Mitch McConnell is going to be a minority leader at that point. Huge implications in this.
Right.
So we'll see how that turns out. We'll see over the next. I know there's a debate this Sunday night between Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler. They're going to be debating on Sunday night. David Perdue.
Perdue has said he's going to skip his debate, right?
Yeah, he did. He skipped the last debate against John Ossoff in the general, and he's not going to debate Ossoff so far. Ossoff called him a crook in the debate before that. I mean,
which he's being investigated for criminal activity, right? With some stocks.
Yeah, and they found out that he told investigators that he had a third party doing his trades, and now it's come to light that he was doing the trades himself. So
right.
There's a whole lot of investigations there. So we'll see how it turns out. The balance of the Senate is at play with that. So that being said, why don't we transition and talk about the current, and by current, I mean until January 20th, the current president of the Senate, Vice President Michael Pence from the great state of Indiana.
Right.
And most people know him as the husband of mother.
Right. He's you haven't heard much about him. Does he have COVID or something?
That's a good question. I would like to see his latest testing, but the last time we saw him mentioned in a Republican fundraising committee email or a Trump campaign, whatever they're calling the Trump campaign legal fund now.
Right.
And I say legal, I should do air quotes around legal fund because it doesn't go to his legal fund. People, please stop giving to it.
Right.
It just goes to him to exhaust campaign debt. But November 25th is the last time Mike Pence was mentioned. And in a subtle move, a lot of the emails have dropped the Trump-Pence logo and now are only saying Trump in the logo. Insiders are saying that Mike Pence is not on board with the legal strategy of the Trump campaign. And the quote that I heard was that he doesn't want to go down with the sinking ship.
Well, it's just sinking for now, right? I mean, it's going to rise again in 2024.
Yeah, right? If you think Trump will really run again in 2024.
Well,
But I mean,
isn't that what he's saying now to his
that's what he's
supporters?
saying. He'll definitely paralyze the field until then. And Mike Pence has been the willing lieutenant, the guy who's been the bootlicker in chief, to sit here all along and say, "Yes, Mr. President, thank you. May I have another? You've done such a great job on COVID. You've done such a great job on this, great job on that."
Right.
And I honestly believe his whole thing was to use a phrase from the craps table, he was betting on the come, so that he would be able to be positioned to be that front runner either in 2024 or 2028. And now with Trump saying he's going to run again, Pence is pretty much out on an island. What's he going to do? He's not going to run against his boss, is he?
Well, you would think not, but what has he got to lose? Trump's not going to make him the VP again, which makes you wonder. I guess he could always pick Marco Rubio as his running mate.
What about Nikki Haley? Come on, we talked about that already.
Right. But the thing about Pence and Haley is they have too much sense for this Republican Party. They have too much common sense, and they realize this election wasn't stolen, that 80 million people, while they all might have not voted for Joe Biden, they all certainly voted against Donald Trump. So, yeah.
Well, Mr. Pence is in a tough spot.
Right.
And as is the Republican Party, because Donald Trump's not going anywhere. We talked about this before,
right,
on a couple of our podcasts. Win or lose, he wasn't going anywhere, and he's not going to go anywhere. He's already talked about the fact that he and that leads us into talking about Trump 2024. He at a Christmas party at the White House last night, he said to the crowd, "I'll see you in 4 years." He's speculating on announcing his campaign and having a campaign event the day of the inauguration while not attending Joe Biden's inauguration, which will be the first time in I don't know how many years that a sitting president who was alive hasn't attended an inauguration.
That's a good stat. I wonder if we could look that up.
So we've got that Trump 2024 campaign hanging out there where he says he's going to run again. I think he's going to threaten to run again, but when push comes to shove, I don't think he will.
Well, my mother-in-law tends to agree with you. She thinks he'll be too old for the rigors of the campaign.
Well, it may well be Trump 2024, but I don't think it'll be Donald Trump. It might be Donald Trump Jr.
Right. So 3 times in history have presidents snubbed their successors' inaugurations. The John Adams snubbed Thomas Jefferson.
John Quincy
Adams
Andrew
snubbed
Jackson.
Yeah, and then Andrew Johnson snubbed. Who came after Johnson?
U.S. Grant.
Right. Yep. That's the last time. So
I didn't know. I was going to bet on James Buchanan snubbing Lincoln.
Yeah, it's not listed in this article, but maybe I will have to check on that.
So, Trump's not going to invite Biden to the White House for a traditional coffee or tea that they usually do, and then they usually ride to the inauguration together. Right. He's not going to have Biden over to the White House. Biden doesn't need a tour of the White House like somebody else who'd never been there needs it. I think he pretty much understands the ins and outs of it. But to me, it's just an insult to the American people.
Right.
The fact that he's not going to follow the usual norms, but he hasn't followed the norms since he's been in office. So why should we be surprised?
Right.
So we shall see how Trump 2024 turns out.
So
before we go ahead.
So James Buchanan, not only did he attend the inauguration, but he rode to it in the same carriage as Lincoln.
Interesting.
So yeah.
There's a lot of debate that James Buchanan was actually the first gay president that we ever had.
Right.
So I went to James Buchanan's house one time in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Right.
I was there. We took a tour of the house, and I remember somebody on our tour asked the tour guide, what was President Buchanan's greatest accomplishment? And I remember the tour guide who worked there every day, her exact response was, I'll have to get back to you on that.
Right. I think his
Well,
greatest accomplishment was he led us into Civil War.
yeah, he refused to do anything about it.
Right.
And while he was a sympathizer with the South, he wasn't as big a sympathizer as John Tyler was, the former president, who actually was a Confederate House of Representatives member.
Right. Talk about treason.
Yeah, no kidding. So we got Trump 2024 to look forward to.
Right.
Already coming out of the chute. And, if he's not going to make a serious run, talk about the kind of damage he's doing to his party from a standpoint of he's blocking other people from fundraising. He's blocking other people from coming out.
Well, the Republican Party it's being torn apart. He's just ripping it to shreds. And the thing is, guys like Mitch McConnell and Rubio and Paul Ryan, they have only themselves to blame. They look in the mirror and they're like, this is on us. We allowed this to happen. We made excuse after excuse after excuse. And, terrible things are now happening to the Republican Party. And when I say terrible, as we've said before, we need two viable parties for this country to really work. And so, speaking of terrible, tell us, Dee, what's going on with the Republican Party up in Ohio?
Well, it's pretty wild from a standpoint that Mike DeWine, who is a former U.S. Senator and former Attorney General of Ohio, and by all accounts that I know from some friends and family that I know that live in Ohio, pretty well respected governor of Ohio.
Yeah, I think even the Dems like him, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who like him.
Right.
He obviously has put some pretty strong mandates in place with COVID, which should be expected, as opposed to Oklahoma, where we have basically the wild, wild west of COVID going on right now.
Right.
But he put a mask mandate. He put some other things in place. And now, because of those mandates he's put in place, Republican members of the state legislature in Ohio have introduced articles of impeachment against him. So Republicans are seeking to impeach the Republican governor because they feel like he's overreached on COVID.
I was going to ask you if I heard that correctly. So let me just reiterate. So Republicans are moving to impeach their own Republican governor.
You got it.
And that's a firm backlash, for lack of a better word at the moment, from Trump. I mean, Trump's actions have led the Republican Party to where they would look to impeach one of their own.
Four different legislators in Ohio have signed on to 12 articles of impeachment against him for constitutional overreach based on the COVID rules that he's put in place. I mean, it's unbelievable to me, if I could quote the great Bill Walton, unbelievable that that they're trying to impeach a Republican governor over COVID restrictions, things that he's put in place to try to keep people healthy and keep people safe. Right. I mean, come on, dude. They've jumped the shark on this. At what point does COVID stop being political? I mean, are we ever going to get to the point? We're up to almost 3,100 deaths a day now, which is the equivalent of. Think about this now for a second. I heard this on a podcast with Michael Moore last night. Think about this. It's the equivalent of having a 9/11 every day.
Right.
Remember how we all felt on 9/11?
Yep.
Remember how we all felt that sense of patriotism, that sense of duty, that sense of we won't let them do this to us again. We all rallied behind W. Bush. He stood on top of the rubble and said, the people that did this are going to hear from us soon. We all had that sense of we can never let this happen again, yet we're letting it happen every single day.
Right. Yeah, crazy when you think about it. And so your question was, when does it end? And I said, well, when everybody gets vaccinated. But it's not even going to end there, because half the country, maybe not quite half, but probably 30%, are anti-vaxxers now. They think vaccines are somehow causing other diseases. And so you're going to have half the population walk around without having any protection at all just because they think vaccines are crazy.
Yeah, and they're going to say, "Oh my God, now the vaccine's being administered by Joe Biden, so it must be a wrong vaccine or something."
Right.
We only want a vaccine from Trump. I mean, it literally has gotten to the level of insanity where I just shake my head and I go, how could we get to this point where a disease could be this politicized?
Yeah.
And wearing a mask can be politicized. It's like, I saw a meme on Facebook where it said, if the people of 2020 were on the Titanic, they would be saying, "You can't make me wear a life jacket. I'm not wearing a life jacket. No way. It's my freedom not to wear a life jacket."
Right.
And it's like, come on, people, let's get serious about this. So it's insane and it's crazy that they are impeaching Mike DeWine, who by all accounts has been a good public servant. I don't agree with a lot of his politics, but he's been a good public servant.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of those. And I really fear for the future of our politics because we're moving away from the place where we could have people who are good public servants that just have different opinions on policy than we do. We can differ on taxation, or we can differ on healthcare policy, or we can differ on foreign policy, those kinds of things. But we all came together as Americans, and now we've been so tribalized that even the Republicans are turning on themselves.
Right.
And Mike DeWine is not a moderate conservative by any means, but the Republican Party has gotten so wacko that they view him almost as a liberal.
Right. Yeah, that's crazy. And then to say Kelly Loeffler and David and Perdue are demo rats, just as Larry McMurtry said, you can't make this up. So
that's exactly right. So, well, that almost brings us to the end of tonight's podcast. We've covered a lot of topics, but I think it's important before we leave that we do an in memoriam section.
Absolutely.
And in this in memoriam, I would like to do it in honor and in memory of Hunter Biden's laptop. Yes.
Right.
Hunter's laptop got so much publicity in October, the end of October, and it had so much salacious details on it, and Rudy Giuliani couldn't wait to talk about it. And now, unbeknownst for any reason, the shop that laptop was taken to for repair has closed down, and the owner is nowhere to be found.
Right.
So I would just like to, pause and have a moment of silence for Hunter's laptop, because it's been through a lot. So,
well, if it ever was Hunter's laptop,
I mean, there's so many things happening right now that, and I heard this at one time, and I know you and I've talked a lot about being really careful about comparing things to Nazi Germany and comparing things to Germany in the 1930s, because there used to be an old axiom that in a debate, the first person who mentioned Hitler lost.
Right.
Because it was thought you were going for the lowest common denominator. But I will tell you that the kinds of things we're seeing now, where fiction is being presented as truth and truth is being presented as fiction, I mean, it is so reminiscent of, if not Nazi Germany, other authoritarian movements, and particularly in Europe, when we look at Hungary and some of those countries where they've had authoritarians take over, Turkey as well. It's really scary that there's such a blur between truth and fiction now.
Yeah. But like Goebbels said, you repeat the lie long enough, it becomes the truth.
Absolutely. So. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Thanks for another great episode, G-Man. You did a great job, as always. If you're in the state of Georgia, be sure and get registered to vote. I mean, like Ray Charles said, Georgia on my mind.
Right.
You guys are on all of our collective minds, and what you do in this election is going to affect the entire outcome of the rest of the country. And
Right.
so it's two of the most important votes that people will cast in 2020, or actually 2021, when
Right.
the votes actually take place. So be sure and get registered to vote. Everybody else, if you go out and about, please wear a mask.
Right.
It's not that much to ask. Our frontline workers wear them for 12 hours a day sometimes.
Yep.
You can wear it when you go into the store. It's not going to hurt you. It's not a freedom issue. It's not anything it's protecting you and protecting other people. If you're asymptomatic and you don't know it, you might be transmitting COVID to somebody else. So please wear a mask.
Yep. And in that Georgia runoff, you only have 5 more days. The deadline is December 7th. So to get registered. So make sure you get out and do that. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on another episode of the GD Report. Have a good night.
Take care and good night.